Hey, you. I'm so glad you're back. Now, in the last couple of episodes, we talked about the most important question you're ever going to ask. What if God is real? And that question, led us to somewhere deeper. Not to some fluffy old guy in the clouds, but to an actual, eternal, omnipresent force. Someone who steps into reality to show us the way. Hi, I'm Tommy the T, and this is The Little Why, where we break down the big who, whats, and whys of God in a little way through digestible micro sessions. And today, we're stepping into the courtroom. I'm really excited. And the case? Well, Jesus of Nazareth. Who he really was and what that means for the rest of us. Because the story goes, guys, that he didn't just speak for God, he claimed to be God. He entered into our world, was crucified, died, was buried, and then rose again from the dead. And if that is true, then it changes everything. Now, like in any real court case, and this is the truth, whether it is a traffic dispute or small claims or a capital trial, the jury doesn't just jump in cold, all right? They're given a set of rules before the case begins. I've been to jury duty. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't, but essentially all of the jurors, they walk into the courtroom and a judge will vet them and they'll ask them a bunch of questions. And then once the jury's selected, the judge will literally look at all of them in the eye and he will say, "You are here to listen. You must remain open-minded, do not jump to conclusions, don't rely on hearsay. And, the verdict that you render, it must be based on evidence, not emotion, not rumors, not outside influence." That's what happens in a real courtroom. And guess what? You're on the jury now, and this isn't a small claims case. This is literally like the biggest case in history. Over the next few episodes, we are going to walk through the evidence, just like a courtroom trial. And at the end, you're going to render the verdict. Okay? Who was Jesus? Was he just a man? Was he a myth? Or, as Christians believe, was he actually God in the flesh? C.S. Lewis, I believe, he said Jesus was either man, myth, or legend. Or, wait, I said that wrong. He was either Lord, liar, or lunatic. That's what he said. Okay. There's a bunch of different kind of sayings about this, but it's true. He was either who he said he was a liar, or he was a lunatic. And then the fourth component was he a legend? So we're going to talk about all of those and we're going to go through all of the evidence so you can decide why. And before any case begins, like any normal trial, we have to lay out some ground rules. So here are our rules of the court. Are you ready? Number 1, you must keep an open mind. You probably have prior beliefs, maybe even some doubts, and that's definitely okay. But like any juror, you do need to withhold your final judgment until all of the evidence is presented. All right. In an actual courtroom, real jurors are instructed. You must not be influenced by sympathy, prejudice, or public opinion. Keep an open mind throughout the trial and do not decide the case until all evidence has been presented and arguments have been made. And that same rule applies here. Don't let internet memes or assumptions or influencer opinions or your parents' opinions or even your own comfort level shut your ears before the case even starts. Leave that at the door. Number 2, you must base your verdict on evidence, not emotions. In a courtroom, jurors are told to make decisions based on the evidence presented. They can look at testimony, documents, reliable sources. You can't just say, "Well, I just don't like religion, so it must not be true." Or, "I've never personally experienced God, so he must not be real." That's not a verdict, that's bias. You don't go into a courtroom and say, "That guy just looks guilty, so he must be guilty." Be intellectually honest here, okay? This isn't a mild case. Your eternity might depend on this, guys. This is real. This is eternity. Let's be fair. Let's be honest. All right. Room number 3. You will be presented with real world historical evidence. This is not blind faith. We're going to look at things like eyewitness accounts, non Christian sources, ancient historical documents, behavior of key figures under pressures, prophecy, and the explosive spread of Christianity under Roman persecution. And, we got to be fair here. We're also going to fairly consider counter arguments like any trial. You don't just hear from the defense, you hear from the prosecution, right? You got to hear both sides. Skepticism, other religious beliefs, secular objections. And we're going to look at them all. Okay. And you're going to hear these counter arguments and cross examinations pretty much after every major claim. So this is really, truly a real trial. It's not a one-sided sales pitch. And I am sure as this trial goes on, I'm going to get some comment warriors. I'm going to get the skeptic tank is what I call it. And I encourage your skeptics. And if you're genuine, okay, if you truly are genuine and you have a real question, please put them in the comments and, like I can do a side answer or maybe we can incorporate that into the show. But it is so important to ask those hard questions. And don't be afraid of them. That's why I made this podcast. It's the little why. Why would God do that? Why did God send the flood? Why would a moral God kill all of these people? Those are important questions to ask. I ask them. I encourage you to ask them, but ask them out of a place of humility, not out of a place of ego. Number 4, you do not need to reach absolute certainty here. When you serve on a jury, the judge will tell you you need to be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, what does that mean? In life, we are not 100% certain of anything. I do not know with 100% certainty that I'm going to go and buy a bottle of Advil at the grocery store and that Advil is not truly poison. I cannot prove that. I'm not watching the ingredients being grown and processed and vetting every little person. I have to have some accountable, like some amount of trust that these are professionals under their laws and regulations to put these things in place. And that when I buy a bottle of Advil, that is actually a bottle of Advil. That is reasonable doubt. There is literally nothing in life that you'll ever be 100% evidence for. And I think it's only fair to ask you to have that same measure of reasonableness on this trial. So evaluate yourself. If you're one of those people who's like, I need 100% evidence, fair enough. But judge this trial on the same measure of what you do every other decision in your life. All right. So next up here, an important point too is like, just know we're never going to have 100% evidence on historical figures. That's not how history works. We don't do that with any historical figure. I mean, nobody has Instagram footage of Julius Caesar or Plato or Alexander the Great, but we trust in their existence because we have historical records, eyewitness accounts, multiple sources, and effects that they left behind. And so we're going to use that same method to measure, historical facts in this trial here. And, you're not going to ask to be believed blindly. I mean, you're just going to be asked, is it reasonable to believe this is true based on all the evidence? All right. And last up here is the verdict is yours alone to render. I am not here to convince you. That's not my job to convince you. I am not here to force your hand, okay? There is no preacher waiting to dunk you in the baptismal font at the end of this show. Or it doesn't work like that. I am literally just presenting the case. I am the prosecution and the defending attorney. That is it. You're the jury. You decide what's credible. You decide what makes sense. You decide what to do with Jesus. So if you're ready, take a seat, get comfortable, but stay sharp. This is a question that billions of souls, literally billions of souls, have lived and died for. Okay. And you are now being called to weigh in with courage, humility, and truth. Now, in our next episode, we're going to open up the first case file. We're going to start actually looking through historical evidence of Jesus. Was he even a real person or a legend that got out of hand? I do have these posted on my blog on my website, talameanstudios.com. So you can actually read ahead if you want, but I'm going to try to speed this cadence up. So the podcast and the blog are both released on the same day. 3 o'clock Fridays, the Mercy Hour, is my target. So I might have an extra show this week, maybe even 2 shows to get caught up. So if you want to read ahead, go to my website. If not, chime in later this week. That's it. So court resume next Friday at 3 p.m., guys. See you then.